All right, well, new chief of police here in Boise, very storied career in Portland. Why Boise? Why move from Portland to Boise? What's your motivator to be here in the city of trees?
The story that I've said repeatedly about having some friends that moved back to Boise that were from Boise and them enticing me to come out and look when the opportunity presented itself. I'll be very candid. I wasn't looking to be a chief of police at that time. The only chief of police job I've ever applied for is this one. But I came out to visit my friends, in part. You know, you've got to humor good friends that you've known for over a decade, and it's impossible not to fall in love with this town. You know, there is the natural beauty and splendor that pales in comparison to the beauty of the people here. An incredibly professional police department, storied in its own right in some of the advancements it's had in community policing, the professionalism that it's worked towards developing here, and just the opportunity was such an incredible fit at this time, especially when I looked at Boise as a growing city and the opportunity to come with the knowledge that I had from a 20-year career in another Northwest city, and to come here and to help navigate to keep all of those things that make Boise wonderful, to keep them in place as the city grows. It was just too much of a calling to take a pass on.
When you were hired, there was a very vocal group, it's hard to say how many there were in the group, that said, well, we don't want someone from Portland because we want to keep Boise, Boise. We don't want Mayor McLean to make this the next Portland. To those people, how would you explain to them how your experiences and career in Portland helps you here in Boise?
So I would start out by saying I don't want to make Boise Portland either. I don't want to make it Seattle. I want to keep Boise, Boise. The distinct advantage I have is, you know, if we rewind the clock 20 years and we looked at many cities in the Pacific Northwest, they had a feeling of sort of hometown. They were inviting, and I've seen that luster fade in some of the other cities, including where I used to work. I have the distinct advantage of knowing what well-intentioned ideas that sounded good at face value had some really negative consequences, from the perception of public safety, the sense of public order. I have an opportunity to help navigate around those same pitfalls. That's very much what I intend to do. Whether that's appropriately staffing so you can continue community policing, whether that's other programs that may have some sort of collateral impact on that sense of public order and public safety, it's a distinct advantage to have a little bit of a sneak peek roadmap ahead.
In the midst of a pandemic and social justice movements across the country, understandably, political climates are very tense right now, including here in Boise. Of course, a number of weeks ago, there was a big demonstration in front of City Hall. It was the Defund the Police rally. It got out of hand, and documented Boise police last week, 2 weeks ago, looking for people caught on video that were fighting each other, punching protesters back and forth. You could talk about what groups were there all day, but next Tuesday, there's another Defund the Police rally. Heading into that, what is your mindset of how we handle that situation? There's a lot of criticism on how it was handled last time and that police maybe let it get out of control.
Well, I think it's fair criticism. We should always be willing to listen to our critics. I think, sort of to your point, you're talking about what an exceptional event this was. That sort of incivility towards others, that's not a Boise value. It was very surprising. As much as it was shocking to the citizens, it was surprising to the police department to see, and they responded. But there is that moment where, is it unfolding the way it is? With that said, your First Amendment rights, your right to free speech, regardless of what the content is, that's a constitutional right. We will do everything we can to protect it. We're going to move forward with a much more robust plan. We intend to make sure that groups are separated as much as possible, regardless of what content may be said from one side or the other, and that's really an oversimplification, and that if there is any sort of criminal conduct, that there's quick intervention to that effect.
I've seen calls from people online saying, the new chief of police, he should be there next Tuesday. Do you plan on being there and watching the rally or being there as an observer to see what happens?
I will be engaged. That's a fair way of describing it.
Okay. And really a driving force of these Defund the Police rallies is there's these growing pockets, not just here, across the country, a distrust in the police, a distrust in law enforcement. A common thread is some communities saying, well, we don't feel like they have our best interests at heart. We don't feel like the police want to defend us because we're out here saying we want to defund them. To those people that just don't trust law enforcement right now, what's your message to them to assure them that The Boise Police is here to protect all people, regardless of political opinions.
Every member of this police department, every sworn member took an oath to support and defend the Constitution, not just of Idaho, but of the United States. Enshrined in the Constitution is your First Amendment right. There is nothing more important to a police officer than their word and their integrity. We took that oath. We intend to uphold it. We will do everything we can to protect people's First Amendment rights. It's vital to the health of our republic, and we'll do everything we can to protect it.
Another real tense debate nationally here in Boise, mask mandates. As they continue to come down, there's questions about enforcement. I spoke with the city leader yesterday outside of Ada County who told me it's almost unfair to ask our police to enforce mask orders because there's already a growing, disrespect for them. We don't want to put this type of extra pressure to have them being the mask police on top of them doing everything they already do. How do you handle, I guess, these mask enforcements as they start to come down, most notably yesterday, a specific one here in Boise and now in Ada County?
It's really an education-first approach. If we talk to any of the health officials, they say any increase in the use of face coverings or masks to potentially reduce the transmission of COVID-19 is a benefit, from the health services standpoint. Anything we can do to educate and inform people and try and get them of their own accord to don face masks is a benefit. It doesn't put us in contention. It really ties into the heart of community policing by engaging and informing people. I think we've got to take an education-first approach. Enforcement is always an option. I don't think that we've hit that tipping point where we want to exercise that. I think we need to continue to just work with the public to help them recognize the benefit it has for them.
And clearly you're already hired, you're here, you're working in the job, but a job interview question that comes up is, what faults do you have? What improvements would you like to make if you get this job? Applying that to the police department, applying that to yourself, what, I guess, improvements would you like to make? What's your mindset coming into this in terms of, hey, we're not perfect, these are the areas we really want to improve in?
So, first thing is the Boise Police Department is a well-respected, high-performing police department. It's nationally recognized as a leader in certain programs. With that said, much to your point, and much to Boise's motto, there's nothing we can't do better. There are areas I think that we can improve and build upon some of that success. I think advancements in data transparency, as well as just transparency in general towards the process that go on here in the police department. I think that there's room for revision and reform to our internal discipline process and the internal affairs process. I think there's an opportunity there. I think there's opportunities to grow and develop in the behavioral health response team, as well as to mirror counterpart to it. That's really what other places call the service coordination model that focuses on addiction-related issues rather than mental health. I think there's the ability to continue to invest heavily in community policing as the city grows, because it's an incredibly resource-intensive approach to policing, and it's all measured in success and what doesn't happen, and so we have to really compare ourselves to other cities. I think the fact that some of the tension we see playing out and some of the distrust we see playing out in other cities is nowhere near the same magnitude that we see in Boise, despite the size of many of those cities being, they're very similar to us. That's a statement of how well this approach has worked and why we need to continue to invest in it.
Police departments and law enforcement offices, they continue to evolve over the years. Of course, you look back outside, all the pictures of over the years of what the uniforms used to look like, what the squads used to look like. Fast forward to 2020, in some departments across the country, noticeably in Texas, there are some movements to have, I guess, less officers responding to mental health crises, stuff like that, and actually equip officers or bring health experts in who specialize in mental health crises so that you don't have, the situations where you have police on the front lines dealing with something they may not be equipped with. What's your mindset on bringing in mental health experts or a mental health unit to maybe be dispatched to situations where, honestly, a police officer may not be the best resource?
I think we have to step back and look at how did the police inherit that role and who was filling that role before and why. I think that there are opportunities for other resources to respond, and it's appropriate for those resources to respond. We have to have the infrastructure available as a city, as a community, as a county to do that. With that said, there are often situations, and I've seen it play out, where we've sent mental health practitioners to address an issue, but the police are really standing by in the shadows because of the uncertainty. I think we need to recognize that there's still going to be a demand for police services because we're dealing with, unfortunately, very uncertain, unpredictable situations there. I think arguably a better approach is really the paired clinician to a police officer model, much like the behavioral health response team that we have here, in building out on that. Frankly, a lot of the problems that we're seeing play out in the community goes back to a reduction and a defunding of state mental health systems and how that played out 40 years downrange. I think we need to be very thoughtful and very deliberate in our approaches, because we don't want to make a decision now that is well-intentioned and have to pay for those consequences 40 years downrange as well.
The two men that preceded you in the job, Acting Chief Weiniger and then, of course, Chief Bill Bones, what type of message or conversations have you had with them in terms of, hey, here's what we would like you to know about our city, take it for what it is, but this is the advice we're giving you?
I have sat down with, obviously, Deputy Chief Weiniger is still working for us. His office is right next to mine. We frequently talk about things. I had coffee with Chief Bones at a socially safe distance just the other day. And really a lot of the information that they've talked to me about is to what I alluded to, what makes Boise so special, that human connection, and really some fairly in-depth conversations about, with the rapid growth that Boise's facing, how do we maintain that? How do we keep that sense, not just from the police being engaged with the community, but to help provide an environment where it feels safe so that the community is doing it amongst each other as well.
Of course, the community will know you as Chief Ryan Lee. You'll be the Boise Police Chief, and when you're out and about, people may recognize you. But as a citizen of Boise, as Ryan Lee the man, who is Ryan Lee, and what would you want people to know about you on a personal level?
That's a good question. I think the first thing that I would tell you is that I'm a family man. I've been married for over 25 years. I've got two wonderful children that are getting older, which means I'm getting older as well. But that I'm a person who very much so is driven by their moral and ethical commitments, that I'm very committed to my family and my community, and I look forward to this welcoming home.
Where do you see yourself in 5 years?
I see myself as the Chief of Police in 5 years.
Well, you answered all my questions. Is there anything you'd like the people of Boise or the people of Idaho to know about you and what you're bringing to this department?
I am bringing forward to the future of what the Boise Police Department will be, and the only other thing I wish to tell the community is thank you for welcoming me to such a lovely place.
Thank you for your time, Chief.
Thank you.
Awesome.